Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to my channel. My name is Bernard, and today I'd like to talk a little bit about Itzhak Perlman, the great violinist, and my perspective on Perlman's career as a member of the audience. Many times I heard him play, and also playing with him quite often with San Francisco Symphony. I think of Itzhak as the man with a sense of humor second to none in the classical world, and yet also is a man with profound understanding of the human condition. Perhaps it was all this because of his handicap. He got polio when he was very young, and maybe polio changed his young life, but certainly didn't limit his enjoyment to live life to the fullest, because he certainly has. I've heard him say that almost falling in snow is much worse than actually falling. I've seen him break a string while playing Tchaikovsky's the Sextet Souvenir de Florence, stop the group, give his fiddle to the second violinist, and as that player goes off stage in search of the new string, Itzhak turns to the audience and announces while checking his watch. He says, "We will now test out the world record for changing a violin string." Another time, he took a break from the music during a concert to make an announcement, to wish Jascha Heifetz a happy birthday. And he said, "I hope Mr. Heifetz is watching the telecast." And he dedicated the concert to him. I don't remember exactly what Perlman said, but he said he said that Mr. Heifetz is the greatest violinist of all time, and that for himself, Itzhak, he would strive but never succeed to reach Heifetz's level, and that Heifetz was so far, far above him as the sun over the earth. This is the great Itzhak Perlman talking, and he, when I heard him say that, made me realize also, I always felt that Heifetz was the greatest violinist, but to hear Perlman also confirm that was a powerful, powerful statement from Itzhak. I've also seen Itzhak burst into laughter right before starting to play, and it was in front of a huge standing room only audience in San Francisco at the Opera House during a concert. And he drew the whole crowd into everybody. All of us were absolutely in hysterics. And here's how it happened. He was performing the Paganini Concerto No. 1 that week. And as often happened to Perlman, I guess nothing that unusual, about 3/4 of the way through the first movement, he broke an E string. So music stops. He immediately turns to the concertmaster, hands Stewart his violin. Stewart Kanin at that time was the concertmaster playing a Stradivarius. He hands it back to Perlman. And then, Ozawa was conducting, Seiji was conducting. And so Kanin turns around to my teacher, Zava Malikian, was sitting behind him, hands the Stradivarius to Zavin, and Zavin's got an E string in his pocket, so he starts changing the E string. While Ozawa gives the signal, we start playing the piece some more, and Perlman is playing on the Stradivarius of Kanin, and it's a very different instrument. And I remember glancing over, and Perlman was kind of scrambling around a little bit. It was like the violin wasn't responding the same as the instrument he was used to. Whatever, he got through it. We come to the end of the movement, and Zavin's still trying to tune get this E string change. You got to take it off, and he's trying to be careful. My God, this amazing violin of Perlman. And so as we get, finally Perlman finishes his solo part of the piece, and then there's a little bit of a tutti, that is the orchestra playing by itself, before the cadenza. So Ozawa's he keeps watching Zavin to see if that violin's tuned up yet. And as we're getting closer and closer to the cadenza, Ozawa starts conducting slower and slower and slower. And we got these long chords. It sounds so unnatural at the end. We're supposed to be kind of maybe even a cello rondo to the final chord before the cadenza starts. But Ozawa was slowing it down. And finally, Zavin got it tuned up. He was checking to make sure it was close in tune. And he rushes over and he gives the violin back to Perlman and takes the other violin. And just at that point, we came to the end of this tutti, and Ozawa cuts it off, and Perlman raises the violin to play, and then he starts to laugh. He just couldn't help himself. He started to laugh, and so we were all laughing and laughing. And one of the most amazing things that happened right after that, when the laughter finally died down, that here's Perlman about to play the Sore cadenza. Sore cadenza is the most difficult cadenza ever written for violin, just filled with technical difficulties. The piece itself is a full 5 minutes long. And here Perlman's been laughing and he's played a different violin. So he puts his violin up, just checks to make sure the E string's in tune. Then he sets off through that cadenza, plays it flawlessly, like nothing had happened. It was a most amazing performance of that cadenza. So that was one example of the crazy things that can happen during a classical music concert. Earlier in the week, we'd had an equally funny situation. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and Perlman, the orchestra was on stage, and Perlman was out there ready to go with the rehearsal. We were going to play the last movement of the Paganini. We hadn't rehearsed that earlier. And Maestro Ozawa was nowhere to be seen. So we wait for a minute, Perlman's kind of looking around. Then he finally goes, psst, psst, come on, let's play it. So he raises his bow and he gives a downbeat, and that last movement starts out with kind of just a little accompaniment, bum, 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 out of the orchestra, and then the violin comes on, bum, 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 and so we start playing this piece without the maestro up there. Within 1 minute, Seiji comes running out on stage. He hops up on the podium. He looks a little embarrassed. He cuts us off, and he says, "I'm sorry. He had something to do." So we all had a good laugh. Perlman was there chortling right along with the rest of us. What a sense of humor on that guy. So, as a postscript to mention, that week, Itzhak was playing a borrowed Stradivarius famous among the Stradivarius, called the Spanish Strad. One of the most incredible violins. I don't think I ever enjoyed Perlman's playing more than when he played that piece, that Paganini, with that violin. I mean, I've heard him play beautifully, and it's wonderful. But that violin had just a magical voice. Just so wonderful. After I didn't know, of course, that was a borrowed instrument at that time, but later on I found out about it. And then, Perlman then at some point moved on. He purchased the Guarneri del Gesù, very, very fine instrument, and it has a name, but I've forgotten what that was called. But then, after playing that instrument for many years, he purchased from Yehudi Menuhin the wonderful Stradivari called the Swallow. And he's been playing that ever since, probably more than 20 years. And the violin was a marvelous violin, is a marvelous violin. I heard Yehudi play it a number of times. He soloed with the symphony. So I got a chance to hear Yehudi play that violin and to also hear Perlman play that violin. Okay, well, thank you so much for stopping by my channel and listening to my my stories. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll be seeing you on the next video.